We've talked about the hope that the Jets, win or lose, will play competitive games this season under Aaron Glenn, that they'll be an entertaining team to watch. Sunday was not that. The Jets blown out 30-10 by the Bills in a game that really wasn't that close. Thanks for getting up early with us for a flight plan. Hopefully, we're not starting your day off on too much of a downer. This is the 4 Downs edition. We'll break down 4 key themes from the loss. Tim McMaster here, along with Zack Rosenblatt. Please like the show wherever you're watching or listening. Give us 5-star reviews. Those really help us out as well. Zack, before we hit first down, I'm just going to open the floor to you and let you clarify a little bit, just based on your story yesterday and what you were trying to convey and what maybe was misconstrued.
Yeah. I wrote a column just about how much of a disaster yesterday was, how everything Aaron Glenn had been talking about all offseason, everything we saw kind of like felt like it evaporated into thin air. And I maybe could have been clear in my intent in the way I wrote it. I think some people took the way I wrote it as saying Aaron Glenn is running out of time. He specifically, his job is running out of time, which is not what I meant. And what I meant to write was he's coming into a situation. He came in with the right intent. He has the right mindset, and they did all the right things this offseason. But this is not, number one, a fan base that is going to be patient with him. There are already people who are pretty upset. And I don't blame them based on what happened. We're going to get into the game, obviously. This was worse than almost any loss they had last year. If you just look statistically, the Jets, I'm not going to infringe too much on my future stuff, but they've given up 30 points in back-to-back weeks, which they didn't do it all last season. They had fewer total yards in this game than they did all of last season. A lot of the same mistakes that they keep having over and over again, shooting themselves in the foot, bad quarterback play, all that stuff. And my point being was now they're 0-2. The schedule doesn't really get easier. Tampa is a playoff team or a potential playoff team this week. You're on the road. No matter how bad the Dolphins are, the Jets, it's like a house of horrors in Miami for the Jets. And then they have the Cowboys after that. But anyway, my overall point was Aaron Glenn's not running out of time, but he works for an owner that wants to win now. He works for a fan base that wants to win now. And while I think there needs to be patience, and maybe I should have said that better, this is not going to be it. That sounds good in theory. He alluded to this. He's I've been through this before in Detroit and New Orleans. In New Orleans, he came into a situation where Sean Payton had already won a Super Bowl when he got there. And in Detroit, there was pressure. People maybe forget now, but there was pressure on him, and fans were calling for Aaron Glenn's head after that first year where they won 3 games or whatever it was. And then the next year when they started off 1-5, and then the owner came out and gave a show of support, and then they won a lot of games, and then they are who they are now. Can anybody envision that happening here? Does Woody Johnson's not the type to come out in week 5 and give an endorsement to the coach? Maybe he's fully changed everybody talks about. But anyway, my point being this could get ugly fast because that's what happens here. You're in New York now. This is a different thing. If the Lions also had a long history of poor football, but it's still a different environment in Detroit than in New York. The fans here are so starved for something. And for them to lose the way they did, this is a loss that Jets fans have become way too familiar with for it to happen in week 2. After good vibes, it was a loss. And maybe I should have considered better the possibility that they would, crumble a little bit, or not crumble, but a lot of the good things maybe wouldn't necessarily stay that good week to week, especially against a Super Bowl contender. But my overall point was it was an alarming game for a coach that had preached discipline and accountability and all that stuff. And there's the Michael Clemons of it all, which we'll get into. And so there was a lot of concerning stuff to come out of it. And my point, anyway, long-winded, but my point was the clock isn't ticking on Glenn's job. It's ticking on the pressure being levied on him. So I said the honeymoon phase is over. What I mean by that is when you hire a coach, everything's all rosy and everybody's so happy and everybody loves everything he's doing. Everything he says, the last coach didn't say that. The players are, shit talking the previous regime and the culture and all that stuff. But that honeymoon period eventually ends when you start losing. And so so the praise went away yesterday and he started getting criticized for the first time. That's the honeymoon period ending. It's not him being on the hot seat. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that.
No, that's good. And yeah, why don't we just get into it? The fact that it was ugly and it was bad from the start and all of that. And we start with first down, which is Justin Fields, which was the big story in week 1, right? How good he looked. Maybe it was the best game of his career, best performance of his career, and it gave us all hope. I think I said on the episode, if that's the Justin Fields we get, maybe this team can go 500. Who knows? And I will say, Zach, you said, I mean, you've been Mr. Positive this season.
I know.
And what was it? When did you tweet it out? Saturday night?
Oh man, yeah,
The Jets
that was bad.
The Jets could win this.
It's my fault actually that everything went so poorly. I said I don't know, man. I think the Jets could win this game. It got like 2,000 likes, a lot of bookmarks. I think a Bills fan or somebody was like, I see a lot of bookmarks there. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and, I saw that one.
I didn't get old takes exposed, so I was able to.
I even tagged old takes exposed for you, and they didn't come through.
A few people did. Well, I will say I think I saved myself by saying I think they can, not they will. Yeah. So I saved myself a little bit, but I mean the game did not go the way I expected. But
no.
Yeah. I mean,
all right, Justin Fields,
yeah.
3 of 11, 27 yards and a fumble. No touchdowns, no interception. He didn't throw a pick. When he left the game, and for those who didn't see the whole game or left or checked out, he did leave the game early in the fourth quarter with fear of a concussion. So Tyrod Taylor did finish out this game. When he left the game, they had only scored 3 points at that point. They were 0 for 8 on third down. They've been outgained 394 to 100. I mean, we went from like the best Justin Fields performance of his career to could have been the worst.
I mean, quite literally by the analytics. I pulled up the EPA per attempt last night, which is expected points added. It's like an analytical way to say it's kind of like WAR in baseball. It's like, like what you added by being on the field. And in the first game, Justin Fields had his best EPA per attempt, which was like 0.58, which is really good. I think it was like number 1 in the league that last week. And then he had a negative around the same, like -0, like below 0. And that was his worst performance of his career, like out of all of his starts. So like is that the most Jets thing ever? A quarterback has the best game of his life followed up immediately by the worst game of his life. Like just absolutely like, if you want to say same old Jets BS, like that's the most Jets thing ever. We're recording this ahead of when Aaron Glenn's going to speak to the media at 9:30. So I'm guessing we'll get an update. My presumption, and it's possible I'm wrong, would be that he says he's still in concussion protocol. I mean, he took a pretty nasty hit to the back of his head, but we can focus on his performance, which was really bad. I mean, it's pretty hard to only throw that many passing yards in an NFL game. And this kind of speaks to the thing I'd been saying all offseason, and I'm not the only one. What was going to happen when the Jets were trailing by multiple scores and could not just lean on the run? And that happened fast because, and we're going to get into like the mistakes and stuff.
Yeah, we'll get into the reasons for that in the next.
But I mean, his mistake specifically was the fumble that he had. Immediately after like the Clemons disaster, but the fumble that he had gave the ball right back to them, and the defense was able to hold it to a field goal, but you fall behind 10-0, and all of a sudden the Bills are not really afraid of you running the ball anymore because you can't really do it. Like they tried still, and it wasn't working, and the passing game was just not there. Justin Fields was inaccurate. There was a couple drops, but the drops were all on plays where he kind of threw it behind them. So it wasn't really like Garrett Wilson probably could have caught a ball that Fields threw to him, but it was kind of behind him, so it was probably more on Fields ultimately. And I mean, 27 passing yards in an NFL game, that's like worse than Zach Wilson. Like I want to say that you hope that Fields, the reality of Fields is somewhere between week 1 and week 2, and
yes,
he's never even been this bad. So like, I don't know. The fact that the Bills just were able to stifle him in such a way is concerning, and people are going to use the Bills tape as, educational in terms of like how to defend him and all that stuff. But yeah, that was bad. And, I think over the last couple of years, there's been an increased number of guys where if they are in concussion protocol, like late in the game before, they often miss the next game. So like there's at least a chance we have to prepare for a Tyrod Taylor start. And because it's the Jets, like, we can totally envision a scenario where Tyrod goes in there and like has an amazing game, and then all of a sudden it needs to be a conversation at quarterback, but maybe not.
I mean, it was
Tyrod
garbage time, but he
it was
looked
garbage
better
time.
than Fields yesterday. But
He
it
did.
was
Well,
garbage time. So
the thing about Tyrod's never going to be scared to throw it down the field, sometimes to his
Right.
detriment. And so he's going to throw it. He's going to air it out. He's going to run around, and he's probably going to get hurt. That's kind of the Tyrod way. So that'll be a conversation for later in the week. We'll dive more into it because I'm sure I would think we'd have more. Although knowing the way these things go, we probably won't find out for sure if Fields is playing till like Saturday. But
right.
but yeah, Fields was really bad ultimately. So there's not much more to say about it. You hope that he bounces back from this. Let's say he does miss the Bucs game, which is a good defense. You come back against Miami, that's not a very good defense. The week after that, the Cowboys doesn't look like they're a very good defense. The Broncos are after that, but so there's a couple weeks coming up where you hope he can get a little more comfortable in the pocket and make the right decisions. But whatever it was, the Bills got to him mentally, and he struggled, and then he got knocked out. So the Jets need him to be better, obviously. Like, that's not very controversial.
All right, second down, bad mistakes and stupid penalties. And yes, we're talking about you, Michael Clemons. And I'm sure, I mean, Twitter just, it just erupted. Yeah. It was like, well, of course that happened. Like, could have predicted that. Like, why is that guy on the team? It just it got ugly really fast on social media. And I mean, it's all fair because this is what Michael Clemons is, right? But anyway, the fact is it was 3rd and 19. The Bills get the ball on a defensive breakdown. Josh Allen gets 40 yards on a running play, so they're in field goal range. But the Jets push him back, and it's 3rd and 19. Looks like they're going to hold him to a field goal, and not a gimme field goal at that point either, although probably 3-0. But instead, on 3rd and 19, Michael Clemons gets called for the roughing the passer on, just in this day and age, the easiest call you could ever make. It was in the wide open, and they pointed out in the game, it was within the 2 steps, right? Like you get the quick, but he hits him up a high over the shoulders. It's Josh Allen, like just that alone. It was just a clear one, 15 yards, first down. Jets go down 3 plays later, score the touchdown, and it's 7-0. And then Fields fumbles, and then it's 10-0. And then it honestly felt like the game was over at 10-0. But it all kind of, I think when we think back on this game, and if you want to assign something to every game, right? Like week 1 was maybe the Gibson game. This was the Michael Clemons game in a bad way.
Yeah, because this doesn't feel like a team that's going to be able to overcome big deficits. And so making the first quarter, they come out, they go 3 and out on the first drive, and that's where you're like, oh crap, because last week they scored on 4 straight possessions. We're like, ooh, this is a fun offensive team, and then we're like, oh wait, I'm familiar with this. But the Clemons of it all, there's not much more I have to offer than has been offered. Like Joe and Connor Rogers on their pod, they did a great job ranting about him. But number one, that I think people were like, that was a soft penalty call. That's going to be called every time in the modern NFL. Number one. Number 2, Michael Clemons has not earned the benefit of the doubt in these situations. And number 3, as you mentioned, it's Josh Allen. If it's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, they're getting that call every time. And Josh is very dramatic with his head throwing back and all that stuff. It was,
you know what? That's a good point, because Clemons didn't actually hit him in the head, but the way Allen flung his,
he would have been penalized. He would have been penalized even if he didn't do that, though. I think. I think that.
Right. No, I'm not saying it should have been a penalty, but just good. No. Allen's really good at that.
Yeah, and the aftermath of this is now, because Aaron Glenn has been Mr. Discipline all offseason, Clemens comes to the sideline, he yells at him, and then Clemens is right back out there for the next drive. And it's so interesting to me that Michael Clemens is kind of the lightning rod for this fan base. It was Xavier Gibson wasn't as extreme of an example, but fans are out on him. Clemens has been like this for 2 years now, if not 2.5, where the coaching staff loves him, keeps playing him, he keeps doing the same things, and they keep throwing him out there playing significant snaps. Wasn't helped by the Jermaine injury. He wound up leading the team in defensive end snaps this week. It's more of a problem of poor depth and poor roster construction than they don't have a better option than him, unfortunately, is the reality of it. But I don't know, man. It's Michael Clemens being the thing that's going to turn the fan base against Aaron Glenn is just, I don't know if that's the hill you want to live on or die on, I should say. And so I'm not if Jermaine is hurt and we're going to get into injuries, you have to play Michael Clemens. because your other options are Braden McGregor, Tyler Barron, and some guys on the practice squad. So it's pretty bleak at defensive end, unless you go out and sign a veteran or sign somebody off a practice squad, which I think they should if they haven't already pursued it already. I think defensive tackles are fine. But anyway, so yeah,
Clowney was available until yesterday.
He was, yeah, but guys like him and Zadarius Smith were never actually coming to a Jets team that's like not a contender. But anyway, back to mistakes, because I got sidetracked by Clemons. I am curious to see what Glenn says about him. But yeah, there was so many really poor mistakes, especially on defense. Like the tackling effort at so many moments was so bad. You know, there's a drive. I don't have the details in front of me, but there's a drive where they start off the first two plays, they gain like 28 yards on rushes, Justin Fields and Breece Hall, and then they do this end around play to Arian Smith, which the defense reads from the moment go. The defense is in the backfield, 10-yard loss. The next play, Arian Smith lines up off sides, incomplete anyway, and then they wind up like punting it away. And you know, there's plays on defense. You know, James Cook touchdown run. Quincy Williams, terrible missed tackle. They had like, I think 9 missed tackles in this game. That was supposed to be a point of emphasis this offseason. At the end of that play, Brandon Stevens, at least in the highlight I watched, it looks like he just gives up about halfway through. And so James Cook runs pretty easily for a 41-yard touchdown. The tackling was poor. Sauce Gardner on a blitz. He has Josh Allen in his sights and basically runs right by him. Like, it's just one thing after another in this game. Tony Adams, there was a third down play. He gets called for DPI when they get a stop. It would have been 4th down. Instead, it's 1st down, and they wind up scoring on that drive. And it's like, that's why you heard the guys in the locker room saying, like, we beat ourselves, which is true to a degree, but you don't get killed by that much if you beat yourself. You just were the worst team ultimately. And so across the board, like, it's hard to find a lot of positives from yesterday's game. Like I was messaging in the Discord. Like, if you want to point to a positives, there, Austin McNamara, who had a pretty good game punting the ball. Nick Folk made a nice field goal. Quantez Stiggers had a nice tackle on a punt coverage, and Jawan Briggs had a sack as a defensive tackle. Like, other than that, it was across the board bad. And there were mistakes, there were drops, there were poor reads, there were poor play calls. You know, Aaron no, we're getting into coaching later, so I'll wait for that. I'll hold that for later. But it's hard to fathom that this team like keeps shooting itself in the foot in the way that it did. Looks like you're frozen a little bit there, Tim. But man, this team, they cannot get out of their own way. And it's yeah, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but you're resetting. But yeah, you know, I'm curious to see what sort of changes Aaron Glenn makes this week as a result of all these mistakes. Because he had that quote last week where he talked about if you contribute to losing, or if you're the reason why we lose, you're not going to play. So, like, what does that mean for Michael Clemons? What does that mean for Brandon Stevens? What does that mean for all these guys? I mean, Tony Adams is hurt, but like Brandon Stevens' lack of effort on that one play is, I'm very curious to see how they respond to that, I would say.
Yeah, and 3 defensive penalties led to first downs in the first half alone. The other stat I wanted to share from this one that is ugly is that it was the first time the Bills had ever won a game when Josh Allen didn't throw for or rush for a touchdown, just to show you. But they still piled up all that yardage, just not getting the end zone. Okay, injuries. They piled up. Jermaine Johnson, Tony Adams, Michael Carter, Fields with the concussion that we already talked about. I will say Adams' fan base is probably like, well, time for Malachi Moore, right? Which is one thing we've talked about. But overall, when you look at these injuries and this defense, like, it feels like Jermaine Johnson is huge because of everything we talked about. But overall, like, this team can't afford to be banged up.
Yeah, I mean, they lack depth, especially, you know, wide receiver and defensive end. They're the 2 positions I think we focused on all summer in terms of lack of depth. And at wide receiver, Josh Reynolds being out shouldn't have been as big of a deal as it was. Like, Tyler Johnson played almost every snap. He played more snaps than Garrett Wilson, actually. I don't even know if he was targeted. The passing game was awful. I don't even blame him necessarily for that. But Alan Lazard, like, I didn't mention him in the mistakes conversation. He played 20 snaps. The lack of effort he gave on one run block, I think it was Tre'Davious White was his man. He like basically didn't even try and block him. And so he tackled Breece Hall for a 5-yard loss. If Alan Lazard isn't even giving effort on blocking plays, why do you have him on this team? Like, I just don't get. Arian Smith played 20 snaps. They clearly are trying to manufacture touches for him, which I understand. It just maybe didn't work out of the way it should have in that game, and it's made life harder for Garrett Wilson, I would say, too. But so you have Josh Reynolds injured, didn't play. Kene Nwangu didn't play. They played Isaiah Williams as the punt returner. I don't really think he showed much. Isaiah Davis was fine as a kick returner. But the Jermaine Johnson is the main, him and Justin Fields, but you at least have Tyrod. Like, you feel better about Tyrod than having to play Michael Clemons and Brady McGregor more snaps at defensive end. So we'll get an update from Aaron Glenn here in like 10 minutes. I don't know how detailed it'll be. He might just say we're still getting tests. But the fact that it was an ankle injury and Jermaine's coming off an Achilles, he kind of just disappeared at halftime. I didn't see what happened or if it was just wear and tear or what it was, because he just didn't return in the second half. Tony Adams, like you said, Malachi Moore did play. I didn't notice him in a good or bad way when he went in, but at least he got the reps. Azaria Thomas played like 6 snaps, which I don't think he played any last week on defense. So I don't think he's ready to replace Brandon Stevens, but I don't know. Brandon Stevens is on alert, I would say, because he's been a disaster through 2 weeks, frankly. And Steve Wilkes has a lot to answer for this week when he talks, because the defense did not look good. But injuries are a concern for sure.
All right, finally, 4th down. We go back to Aaron Glenn, which is where we kind of started this discussion. But this team is 0-2 for the first time since 2021. The honeymoon over, as you said. And when you look at the coaching of this game, it's challenging in a sense, right? Because like we almost didn't find out what the Jets' offensive game plan was because they were down 10-0 so quickly. Yeah. But how does overall this coaching staff now like bounce back? And I guess it starts in 10 minutes with what we hear from Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, this looked like a team that wasn't really prepared for the moment. They were not disciplined. They made a lot of mistakes. The play calls left a lot to be desired in my mind. I think Tanner Engstrand didn't have as good of a day. They fell behind. And that was my concern in terms of field specifically, but also like the play calling needs to be better in those moments. Like the end around call was brutal. I didn't understand why it was 4th and short. They were deep. It was in the first half. It was 4th and short. They were deep in their territory on 4th down. And Glenn opted for a field goal. Like last week, he was very aggressive. They had already been down 20-0, so maybe he just wanted to get points. We didn't get a chance to ask him specifically about that. And then later in the game, it was 4th and inches, and he didn't go for it when the game was already out of hand. So maybe that's why he didn't go for it, and he punted it away instead. But there was a lack of aggression that surprised me based on the way it went the week before. I mean, and then Steve Wilkes has been outclassed for 2 weeks, frankly. Like, he's calling the plays on the defense. Aaron Glenn is involved, but has his hands in everything. Like, this is his defense, and they have not looked good. Their fundamentals have been lacking, and the back end, which is supposed to be a strength of this team, has been a weakness. Even Sauce, a mistake I didn't mention earlier, like Mitch Trubisky comes in when Josh Allen like hurts his nose, and he immediately completes like a 30-yard pass to Josh Palmer in front of Sauce Gardner, who also was called for defensive holding on the play. And Sauce didn't have a good game tackling either, as I mentioned with the blitz. So, again, it's not always completely on the coaches. I fall into the trap of blaming them a lot of times. Like the players have to execute also, but I think Joe Brady outclassed Steve Wilkes, and I think Sean McDermott and the Bills defensive coordinator definitely outclassed Tanner Engstrand. Like, this is a learning moment for Engstrand. He's a younger coordinator. He looked really good in week 1. But, when you're going against talented defensive play callers, you have to do a better job of adjusting to what they're throwing at you. And I don't think they did a great job of adjusting.
Should we finish this thing off by mentioning Elijah Moore?
Yeah. I mean, pretty perfect that he was the one to like really like stick the knife in the side. He had a rushing touchdown of all things. And
he basically did the things that we thought he was going to do at the Jets when he was drafted, right? He was like, I mean, he wasn't like he was prolific, but like made a big play with yards after the catch out of the slot and then scored a touchdown on an end around. Like, that's pretty much exactly what we dreamed of seeing Elijah Moore do in a Jets uniform.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to Joe, who was on our pod the other day. And he was basically like, he's not going to play. Looks like we're getting a couple of questions in the chat we can answer. Yeah, Elijah Moore being the one. It's always like a former Jet. By the way, another former Jet, Bryce Huff, had like the game-winning strip sack for the 49ers yesterday too, which
Right.
somebody mentioned, like, as the Jets were falling apart, like they looked over and the red zone was playing on the TV and it showed Robert Saleh like smiling or something. So it was almost like he was smiling at what's happening here. So
All right, let's get to a couple of questions because I know you have to get going to the press conference. Thanks for the tips. You pay, you get a question, and that's, I mean, we're not.
100%, yeah,
absolutely. Hey, Jake Assman, thank you, Jake, for chipping in. And he says, "When does the pain ever end?" And obviously, like, I mean, that's a question, but we don't have an answer.
That's one of those unanswerable life questions. Look, I will say I don't think it'll be as bad as it was this week. I don't think it'll be as good as it was. I mean, they lost, but offensively, I don't think it'll be as good as it was. Like, I think the Jets will fall somewhere in the middle. The Steelers clearly are not a good team, is my impression, because they looked really bad against the Seahawks. But I don't know. I think the hope is the Jets learn from this and they're able to bounce back in ways that the previous coaching staffs were not able to bounce back from it. And it starts against one of those former coaches, which is Todd Bowles. So
that is one thing. I'm actually looking forward to next week's game a lot because I think it's going to tell us a lot. Like, is this team, are we going to, is there a big change? Is there energy? Is there like oh yeah, like that was not what we are. We're going to show you what we are or not. All right, one more here from Barney Miller. He says, "Why didn't Fields wear the Magic gloves?"
Well, it was rainy in week 1, which I think is why he wore them. So maybe that's the secret. Maybe he needs to put those back on. Honestly, I didn't think of that. It's a good question. But yeah,
there's nothing to say you can't wear gloves on an 80-degree sunny day.
That's true. I mean, guys will wear sleeves and hoodies and stuff on the field in a hockey day, and guys will wear like short sleeves and shorts when it's cold out. So NFL players are crazy. So might as well wear those gloves if it's the Magic,
All right. Parting thought, Zach?
Hopefully we'll be more positive later in the week as we look ahead to the Buccaneers game. We've tried to be positive all offseason, guys. Everybody accuses us.
We have been. This has been an optimistic podcast until this morning. But we'll bounce back quick. We'll pick ourselves.
It's too early to like sound the alarms, but it's a concerning loss is what I would say.
Barney says to ask Glenn about the gloves. I'm thinking that question's not
coming. I don't know if I'm going to do that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. You wrote about Glenn and bad questions and how he reacts. So you don't really want to be in the headlights. All right, that's going to do it for us. Zach's got to get off to the Aaron Glenn presser and report back on how that goes. We will be with everybody again later this week. Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Downs edition of the Flight Plan Podcast.